It begins with a phrase found at the start of nearly every chapter, "In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful," recited countless times, familiar to all. Yet this phrase holds a secret. One copy of it is missing in chapter 9, another appears unexpectedly in chapter 27. These two are exactly 19 chapters apart. Every word in this phrase appears in the Quran a multiple of 19 times, spread across exactly 1,919 verses. This isn't a literary rhythm, it's a deliberate structure, and it marks the start of a deeper design. One phrase revealed the pattern, but it was only the beginning. What you're about to see will challenge centuries of tradition, expose historical alterations, and unveil a mathematical code hidden in plain sight. This is not a theory, it is not theology, it is evidence. For the first time in history, the Quran's preservation can be verified, not by memory, not by manuscript, but by mathematics. You are now entering the preservation mechanism, the divine code they could not erase. Long before computers, before algorithms or code, there were careful readers, quiet minds who noticed peculiar patterns in the text. The word day appears exactly 365 times, one for every day of the solar year. Month is mentioned 12 times, mirroring the structure of the calendar itself. For centuries, these patterns were noted with curiosity, filed away as fascinating coincidences, yet never fully understood. But these weren't anomalies lost in the noise. They were signals pulsing just beneath the surface, waiting to be decoded. They were quiet clues, whispers woven into the fabric of the text, pointing to something far more profound, a hidden mathematical framework, not imagined, not crafted by human hands, but encoded with purpose, precision, and power. A design that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. But uncovering it would take more than observation. It would take a machine.
This machine has stored program concept as its major feature, and that, in fact, is the thing which makes the modern computer revolution possible.
The computer is the creature.
At the right time, we will produce for them a creature made of earthly materials, declaring that the people are not certain about our revelations.
And in 1974, the code finally met its decoder.
I had the opportunity to use computers to decode a message from outer space that brings the final solutions to all our problems.
In 1974, a biochemist named Dr. Rashad Khalifa did something no one had done before.
So what I did was I got the Quran, an original copy with the original Arabic, and I put it in the computer and I decoded an intricate mathematical code that is clearly beyond human ability.
He took the Quran, verse by verse, letter by letter, and ran it through a computer.
So now we have physical proof using the ultimate in scientific evidence, mathematics.
Chapters marked with mysterious Arabic initials like Q revealed something extraordinary.
And it serves as a means for preservation, for the document itself, so that the reader knows that every word, indeed every letter, is from God Almighty. This document is
Briefly, let me explain. The Quran consists of 114 chapters. 29 of these chapters are prefixed with letters that remained mysterious for 1400 years. Nobody knew what they meant until now. There are 29 surahs in the Quran prefixed with these initials, different sets of initials. 14 sets of initials to be exact. For example, chapter 50 is entitled Q. That's it, just one letter, Q, and it is initialed with the letter Q. The computer said that this chapter contains 57 Qs. When you count them, you can count them if you know the Arabic letters. And you'll find that the total is 57. 19 times 3. There is one other chapter in Quran that is initialed with the letter Q, and that is chapter 42, which happens to be more than twice as long as chapter 50 entitled Q. And when you count the letter Q in chapter 42, you'll find exactly the same number, 57. So the only two Q initial chapters have the same number of Qs, 57 and 57.
The two chapters, prefixed with this mysterious initial, chapter 42 and 50, both contained exactly 57 Qs, not more, not less. Together they total 114, matching the number of chapters in the entire Quran. Chapter 50 opens with a single letter, Kaf, and immediately declares the Quran as glorious. That word, glorious, or Majid in Arabic, has a geometrical value of 57. And the phrase the Quran appears in the entire book 57 times. Every detail matched, every number locked in place, even verse numbers added up. Chapter 42 has 53 verses, chapter 50 has 45. Added together, 95, a multiple of 19. And across all verses, numbered 19 in the Quran, the letter Q appears 76 times, exactly 19 times 4. Even words were altered to protect the pattern. In chapter 50, the people of Lot, usually called Qawm, are suddenly referred to as Ikhwan, just to avoid adding an extra Q. The Quran's brilliance speaks for itself, but these choices reveal something more, a mathematical structure, precise by design. This was precision engineering. The code wasn't hidden in meaning. It was built into form, frequency, and function. What if the proof was there from the very beginning? Now we trace the pattern back to its origin, to the first divine command ever received.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
Read in the name of your Lord who created. He created man from an embryo. Read, and your Lord, most exalted, teaches by means of the pen. He teaches man what he never knew.
These 5 verses represent a profound moment in history, the beginning of a revelation that would grow to become the Quran. But what makes them even more remarkable is what we've only recently discovered about their mathematical structure. The Quran emphasizes pure monotheism, the worship of God alone. This central message is reflected throughout its text, including Surah 96, which connects the act of reading and learning with divine creation. But hidden within these verses is something that no one in the 7th century could have recognized. These verses contain exactly 19 words in Arabic, and they contain exactly 76 letters, which is 19 times 4. The probability of any random text containing exactly 19 words and exactly 76 letters, a perfect multiple of 19, is already quite low. But this is just the beginning of what we find in Surah 96. The complete chapter contains exactly 19 verses, and from the first verse to the last, there are exactly 285 letters, which is 19 times 15. But the pattern doesn't stop there. In the structure of the entire Quran, Surah 96 is positioned precisely 19 chapters from the end. What makes this particularly interesting is that these patterns weren't discovered until the 1970s, using computer analysis. No one in the 7th century could have had the tools to design such intricate numerical relationships, even if they wanted to. A coincidence? a divine signature, or something else entirely? As we explore deeper into the mathematical structure of Surah 96, the questions only multiply.
The first verses ever revealed, chapter 96, verses 1 through 5. Hold this structure perfectly. Count the words, exactly 19. Count the letters, 76. That's 19 times 4. Now look at the entire chapter. It contains 19 verses in total. Count all the letters in the chapter, 285 letters. Again, a precise multiple of 19. But if this system is so precise, what happens when something is added that doesn't belong? Up until now, the mathematical structure has been airtight. Every letter, every verse, every chapter fitting into a design too precise to be human-made. But what if one chapter didn't fit? In chapter 9, the only chapter without the phrase, "In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful," something strange appears. Two final verses, 128 and 129, attributed not to consensus, but to the word of a single man, Khuzaymah ibn Thabit. Traditional sources claim his testimony was accepted as equivalent to 2 witnesses. But what happens when we run the math? Without them, the word God occurs 2,698 times, a perfect multiple of 19. With them, 2,699, off by 1. And it doesn't stop there. The word messenger is supposed to occur 114 times, 19 times 6. With the disputed verses, it becomes 115. The word merciful, it should appear 114 times. But with those 2 verses, it's 115. Trust, it jumps from 57 to 58. Lord, from 969 to 970, again off by 1. These aren't arbitrary terms, they're fundamental keywords, concepts of divine authority. And they all break the code, only when these 2 verses are present. The numbers speak for themselves. These verses do not fit the system. Which leads to the question, if they don't belong mathematically, why were they included historically? This isn't subjective, this is mathematics. A mathematical fingerprint points to an intrusion, and suddenly the mystery deepens. Why would such an insertion be allowed? Who authorized it? The Quran corrects human error. This system, this preservation mechanism, is not just decorative, it's defensive. So what happens when someone tampers with it? What follows is not just a mathematical error. It's the beginning of a historical detour, a betrayal written into the very pages of what was once perfect. The numbers say they don't belong. But if so, how did they get there? What began as a hidden code now reveals a hidden history. Even the smallest errors are exposed. In chapters 7, 19, and 38, the letter Sa'd occurs 152 times. Perfectly aligned with the code. But in some printed editions, one verse replaces the letter Sin with Sa'd. That single mistake ruins the count. The system catches it. In chapter 68, the initial Nun appears 133 times, only if spelled completely as Nun, Wa, Nun. This system doesn't rely on memory, manuscripts, or scholars. The Quran verifies itself mathematically.
19 years after the Prophet's death, a committee was formed to produce official copies of the Quran. When they reached chapter 9, some suggested adding 2 verses to honor the Prophet, 2 verses that were never authorized.
There has certainly come to you a messenger from among yourselves. Grievous to him is what you suffer. He is concerned over you, and to the believers is kind and merciful. But if they turn away, say, "Sufficient for me is God. There is no God except him." On him I have relied, and he is the Lord of the great throne.
The mathematical miracle of Code 19 exposed these false additions. This was such a blatant violation that even the Hadith corpus suspiciously points to these two verses as later additions.
I started looking for the Quran and collecting it from palm stalks, thin white stones, and also from the men who knew it by heart, until I found the last two verses of Surat at-Tawbah with Khuzaymah ibn Thabit al-Ansari, and I did not find it with anybody other than him.
These verses were then inserted into the official Uthmanic compilation of the Quran, which eventually led to the assassination of the Khalifa Uthman. Ali, one of the Prophet's closest companions, his son-in-law and cousin, flagrantly fought this addition. Something has been added, he warned. His protest was ignored. Civil war followed. Hussein, the Prophet's grandson, was martyred. And under political pressure, the original manuscript written by the Prophet himself was destroyed. If nothing had changed, why erase the evidence? The victors rewrote the narrative, but the code restored the truth.
When we say that verses 128 and 129 of chapter 9 break the Quran's mathematical code, the question is obvious. If they don't belong, wouldn't history have left a clue? It did. According to traditional sources, a committee was formed to standardize the Quran. Every verse, they said, needed two witnesses. But 9, 128, and 129? They came from just one man, Khuzaymah ibn Thabit. So how did they make it in? A loophole, backed by a suspicious hadith. They claimed the Prophet once said Khuzaymah's word was worth two witnesses. But that ruling had nothing to do with compiling the Quran. Still, that one exception became the basis for bypassing their own rules. Why? Why bend the standard? Why reach for an obscure hadith just to let in two verses? Even the Prophet's closest companion, Ali ibn Abi Talib, reportedly warned, something has been added to the Quran. His warning ignored, his protest erased, but not completely. Scattered records, whispers, dissent, all survived. And as tensions rose, something drastic happened. The original manuscripts, written during the Prophet's life, were destroyed, burned, wiped from existence. If nothing had changed, why erase the originals? Why suppress dissent? Why fabricate hadith to justify just these two verses? Why all this weirdness? Because the victors wrote the story, and they buried the doubt beneath layers of tradition. For 1,400 years, those doubts were just fragments, circumstantial, unverifiable. But then, the Code 19 arrived. And for the first time, the Quran itself spoke. The numbers broke, the design cracked. This wasn't a theory anymore, it was proof. What history only whispered, the Code confirmed. The Quran's preservation mechanism, silent for centuries, had been waiting. The Quran itself promises protection. We revealed the Quran, and surely we will preserve it. 15:9. In 1974, that promise was confirmed, not by faith alone, but by a precise mathematical system built into its very structure. The code uncovered every alteration and verified each authentic detail. Let's break down the evidence, step by step. Proof 1. The word God appears exactly 2,698 times across the Quran. Notice that 2,698 is not a random number. It is exactly 19 multiplied by 142. If any extra word were added, like in chapter 9's disputed verses, this balance would be upset. That's our first clear sign of deliberate design. Proof 2. When we add up all the verse numbers where God appears, the total is 118,123. This total equals 19 multiplied by 6,217. It's as if every mention of God contributes a little piece to a larger, predetermined sum, a sum that perfectly fits into the number 19. Proof 3. Looking at the chapters that begin with the Quranic initials, from chapter 2 to chapter 68. The word God occurs exactly 2,641 times, which breaks down to 19 multiplied by 139. Then, outside of these initial chapters, there are an additional 57 instances, that is 19 times 3. Together, they reinforce the same pattern. Proof 4. Between chapter 1 and 9, if we remove the later added verses, God appears exactly 1,273 times. That number is exactly 19 times 67. With the extra verses included, it would become 1,274, demonstrably breaking the recurring mathematical structure. Proof 5. From where the basmala is missing in chapter 9 to where it is extra in chapter 27, the occurrences of God line up in exactly 513 verses, a figure that is 19 multiplied by 27. This precise multiple would not exist if any alteration occurred. Proof 6. The entire Quran, counting all its verses and even the unnumbered basmalas, comes to a total of 6,346 verses. And that is exactly 19 times 334. Every part, every division of the text fits into this numerical pattern. Proof 7. If we add up every chapter's number, every verse count, and every individual verse number across the Quran, the grand total is 346,199. This formidable number equals 19 multiplied by 19 multiplied by 959. A layered confirmation that even the overall structure of the Quran was designed to reflect this divine constant. No human memory or oral tradition could guarantee such precision. Only a mathematical system, hidden for 1,400 years, could protect the text so completely. This isn't merely a book, it is a meticulously safeguarded message, a divine mechanism that defends itself, word by word, number by number. Over it is 19. Yet, if the Quran was so perfectly preserved, how did its message become distorted over the centuries? Who altered its legacy, and how did its followers come to be divided? In our next episode, we'll uncover the systematic corruption of Islam, tracing how dynasties, doctrines, and human deceptions rewrote what God intended to protect.